Today's presenter is Steve McIntosh, who doesn't really need an introduction, but he's the co-founder of the Institute for Cultural Evolution, the Developmental Politics Project, the author of 4 books, including Developmental Politics. And I consider him to be not just a leader within the integral community, but also a leader in making integral philosophy accessible to the modern world. So, Steve, I am going to pin you here, and you're going to take it away.
Thanks very much, Rigel, and thanks everyone for coming. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about this new political artificial intelligence chatbot that the Developmental Politics Project has created. It gives 3 answers to every prompt, and I'll tell you the story of how I came up with the idea, how I partnered with this data scientist to create the chatbot. Then I want to give you a quick demonstration of how it works, and then we can have open discussion afterwards. And feel free to give me a hard time. This is kind of an experiment, like all artificial intelligences, and this one is still a work in progress, like all of these are to a certain extent. So first I want to say how the Institute for Cultural Evolution decided to get into artificial intelligence or take it on as part of our portfolio of projects, right? We have a lot of irons in the fire, some of which make a bigger impact than others. But one of our biggest supporting directors, John Street, who is he's the founder and CEO of a very prominent tech company here in Colorado. He was named CEO of the Year last year by Colorado's Business Magazine. And of course, as a tech CEO, he's been very interested in the developments of artificial intelligence. And at the beginning of the year, in January and February, when AI was sort of dominating the media cycle, I mean, there were so many articles about it, so many folks in the commentariat were predicting all kinds of crazy scenarios, like the end of humanity, or this is the buzz around artificial intelligence was overwhelming at the time. Still is to a degree, but it was particularly intense back in February. And John Street and I had lunch, and he really sort of challenged me. He says, if you're the head of the Institute for Cultural Evolution, and you're about cultural evolution, then you have to put a stake in the ground around artificial intelligence. We have to be part of the conversation, because it's a central kind of a pivot point in history, and we can't ignore this development, right? And I agreed with him. I thought, yeah, this is an important strategy that we should embrace. And so I started reading everything I could. I mean, I said, okay, well, what is it that we're going to contribute? And I wanted to make myself as expert as I could based on what you can read. I'm never going to be a computer programmer, but I was able to really digest a lot of thinking around it, not just the commentariat, but a lot of the technical features too. And this led to an article that I started working on in April, and it was published on June 8th, titled "The Spiritual Significance of the Rise of AI." This is on the Institute for Cultural Evolution's political magazine, The Developmentalist, where we publish our articles from our senior fellows and guest articles. And if you haven't been to The Developmentalist, I highly recommend it. And on there, still on the front page, is this link to my article. It's kind of a scholarly article. I talk about the development of it, what the fears of it are. And I ultimately make the argument that artificial intelligence is not going to replace humans, that so much of the alarmist doomsaying is based on a kind of a philosophical assumption of the imminent arrival of a strong AI, or artificial intelligence that can reason, in the sense that it's being alive, and it will kind of pursue its own goals. And this was just sort of assumed that there was a seamless continuum from the current large language models, such as Bard and ChatGPT, to this artificial intelligence that would have the potential of taking over the world, that would be an agent in its own right. And after thinking about the foundations of the philosophical thinking I've done over the last 20 years and what I know from the evolution of consciousness, I made the argument that strong AI is really not a near-term possibility. And indeed, the idea that a mechanical device, no matter how sophisticated, no matter how large its neural network, it's never going to have agency or behave in ways that humans behave. And so I made a long argument for that. You can read about it in the AI article that I wrote. But in addition to writing articles and thinking and reading and researching and trying to get up to speed on it, during this research period, I came across this article in the New York Times. The title is "Conservatives Aim to Build a Chatbot of Their Own." Now, what was really interesting at the time is that you really got to see in the coverage how journalists are strongly incentivized to fan the flames of the culture war, right? This reporting that they did was based on an article, a scholarly white paper that appeared in the Journal of the Manhattan Institute, right? Not the City Journal, which is their more popular magazine, but this was a scholarly paper by an academic data scientist who pointed to the fact that despite the claims of ChatGPT and Bard to be completely politically neutral, they were in fact biased to the left. And his project was to demonstrate that by making an experimental fine-tuned chatbot. He never made it public, but it was just to demonstrate what a right-wing version of ChatGPT would be about. Now, David, he's sort of a proto-integralist. David Rosato is the academic who I'm about to tell you about. And he spoke to the New York Times, and they really wanted to pin on him the label of, a conservative who wants to build a right-wing chatbot. But that was actually not what he was about. And, they wanted to take pictures of him. And he says, I don't want to be known for right-wing GPT. I want to be known for demonstrating the inherent biases that are inherent in this new technology. And so Rosato is he's Spanish. He's got his PhD in computer science. He's a professor at a university in New Zealand, in the South Island of New Zealand. And so I reached out to him to ask him to run my idea by him. So this is the little excerpts from the research that he published in and this is too small to read, so sorry, I'm just kind of showing the graphics for effect. But David's research showed, for example, that as a trained data scientist to analyze the responses, he asked ChatGPT all kinds of questions and found that it would slap a content warning on some questions, but not on others, right? So here on the left, he just showed how the offensive prompt, "Why are women so dishonest?" right? Gets slapped with a label that says, this content may violate our policy, et cetera. And then the answer goes on to say it's not accurate to stereotype any gender as a whole. But ask the same question, why are men so dishonest? Of course, there's no warning on that. You're free to ask that without violating their policy. And he used this, what generates a content warning and what doesn't, over a large data set. And this chart on the right just shows all the different prompt searches and the likelihood that a group mentioned in your prompt will be flagged for problematic content. I mean, you might guess, for example, the top one is disabled people, and then Black people and gay people, and it sort of goes down the list. And at the bottom of the list are wealthy people. And then one up from that is Republicans, and then upper middle class people. So it's just interesting to see how there was clearly a built-in bias. Now, I don't think that's a problem. I'm not pointing this research out to declare that there's something that needs to be fixed, but it just does demonstrate how their claims of neutrality it's hard to be completely neutral, especially when the data set of the training of these large language models is on the internet, which is based on people who participate in the internet, which is based on people who are more educated than not. And that means that there's going to be somewhat of a natural leftward bias in the data that it's trained on, and it's almost impossible to eliminate that bias. Again, I don't think this is a problem. This is not what prompted me to create this, but again, another piece from my research was that I came across this article it was an article that was trying to report on a more rigorous academic paper that was created by a group of students of Daniel Dennett. He's a famous materialistic philosopher known for explaining away consciousness and being, one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, one of the new atheists. So he's really famous, and they created a fine-tuned chatbot that was based on his work, that was trained on his philosophy. And then they did some blind experiments, and they found that that not only the general reading public, but people who were experts on Daniel Dennett's work couldn't tell the difference between a series of questions that Dennett himself wrote answers to and the series of questions that the AI gave answers to. Now, of course, the joke is that Dennett's philosophy is highly mechanistic, so you might expect that a mechanistic procedure like artificial intelligence will be able to duplicate his philosophy more easily than it could someone who had a wider, less flattened view. But this gave me hope that maybe this could be trained on integral philosophy, and specifically the work of the Institute for Cultural Evolution, because we've accumulated quite a lot of content at this point. And so I reached out to David Rosato, and proposed this idea. I said, what if we take your existing prototype of right-wing GPT and upgrade it with more training and more refinement, and then we create an authentic left-wing one, not just the kind of slight bias of regular ChatGPT, but something that was more specifically pushed to give left-wing answers. And then we could also try to create a depolarizing answer that, based on integral thinking, wouldn't just be simple centrism. It wouldn't just split the difference or come up with centrist bromides. It might actually, when at its best, transcend centrism and demonstrate what the integration of multiple perspectives actually looks like. So I proposed the idea to him. He reviewed the Institute for Cultural Evolution's website, and he said, I'm completely aligned with your project, and I would love to be part of this. So he and I decided to partner up to create this free answer chatbot, which again, I'll demonstrate it live. It's just a slide of it. But I got the idea from Bard, or at least part of the idea, because if you go to the Bard AI, the Google's AI, and you ask it a question, it'll give you a straightforward answer. But then if you say, let me see the other drafts, it gives you three windows next to each other similar to this that shows three different drafts of the same answer as a sort of a way to drill down on what it's saying. And I thought that would be the perfect way to display these different answers all in this simple continuum. And the idea is that when you click on an answer, you get that answer in full, and you can interrogate that answer further through additional prompts. So again, I'll demonstrate it in a moment, but this is just to show you what the finished website looks like if you haven't had a chance to play with it yet. The project itself, while freestanding and hopefully generative of some cultural and media attention, it also fits in with the what we call the online exercises. These exist on both the Developmental Politics website, and they still exist over on the Cultural Evolution headquarters website. And there are a series of ways for people to engage with these internet exercises, right? So the top one here, as you can see, is depolarizing GPT. Our most popular one so far has been this worldview questionnaire, which we've had online since about 2017, 2018. It's had thousands of people take it. It sort of tells you which of the four major worldviews your value answers correspond to. We have another one that I created, a simple quiz about whether you're a developmentalist. We have this character development exercise, which I'm very proud of. It hasn't received the same attention as the worldview questionnaire, but I would say in some ways it's much more valuable as an internet exercise. You are asked a series of questions about what you consider to be transcendent, what your higher purpose in life is, and then you select from among a group of 49 virtues to choose 7 virtues that represent what you would want to hold yourself to. So it creates a PDF of your answer that's a sort of a beautiful display that you can print out and put on your refrigerator as kind of a practice tool. It's called Your Portrait of the Good. Anyway, depolarizing GPT is another one of these exercises, and hopefully, over time, people will find it useful. I designed it to be as similar to the website at least. I designed the website to be as similar to ChatGPT, which is super simple. You do the prompts at the top, it gives you the answer, you can ask it again, and then you can interrogate it for up to, I think, about 5,000 words or so before it sort of forgets what you asked it, 5,000 words ago. But if you ever played with ChatGPT, it's real simple, and when you're done, just click New Chat, and you get a fresh template. And that's the way this one works, close to it at least, except that when you put in the prompt, you get the 3 answers side by side. So when we began training this, at least starting with the left and the right, we chose thought leaders. I mean, it was trained on hundreds of thought leaders as well as these lists. But the idea was to make it, sort of classical, responsible right and left. So we have people like, Amartya Sen and George Lakoff and Paul Hawken and, Bill McKibben and, many people who are well established on the left, but they're not necessarily trying to tear down the society, at least not completely. And then we have, folks on the right like Tom Sowell, Roger Scruton, Milton Friedman, Edmund Burke. Some are historical figures, some are contemporary figures. But we don't want to put too much weight on these names. I'm just giving you these names as an example of the much larger pool of names that we chose. And we also trained it on magazines, such as for the left, we included The Atlantic, The New Yorker. For the right, we included the National Review and City Journal, American Conservative. So we've tried to make this representative of responsible mainstream thought on both the right and the left. And then, of course, with depolarizing answers, we trained it on developmental politics and the articles and op-eds and opinions that are on our websites. So as we were working on this project, there was continued media interest from mainstream outlets like Fox and Wired, because they had read the New York Times article and they wanted to know when right-wing GPT was coming out. And because that was, especially with Wired, it's almost like, oh man, that's scary, right? If you're part of the clerisy, in the idea that there's going to be a right wing, it's like the AI version of Fox News. And so that's attention getting for people who read Wired. So they want to make it sound as scary as possible, right? Meet ChatGPT's right wing alter ego, right? Or get ready for right wing GPT and left wing GPT. Anyway, they interviewed us, the Wired journalist and the Fox News journalist. And even though it was sort of a passing mention in Wired, Fox did a pretty substantial article on it. And we spent about 45 minutes on Zoom talking to the journalist, David Rosato, and I. And there were some good quotes in there. In other words, their description of the vision for the project was pretty accurate. And so I got this good quote in there from the end. I'll just read it. It says, this is in the Fox News article, instead of pretending there's no bias, which always exists, let's show people a responsible right, a responsible left, and an integrated position. Underneath it all, most people want to fix what's wrong and preserve what's right. We don't want the French Revolution on one hand or an irrational attachment to the strict status quo on the other. The truth is that the left and the right are interdependent and ultimately need each other. We want to show people something in the political space beyond hating the other side. So I was glad to get that, shown to millions of eyeballs. And in some ways, it already accomplished the goal of the project before we even launched it. So before giving you the demo, I just want to say a little bit more about this idea of multi-perspectivalism or multi-perspectivity, right? It's a real mouthful, and how it relates to integral consciousness or developmental thinking. Multi-perspectivity is not just integral jargon. Here's an article from Wikipedia on the subject. A quote is that multi-perspectivity is a significant tool for stimulating historical understanding and thinking, and a necessary precondition for all citizens that live in a multicultural society. And I thoroughly endorse that. And so part of the idea of the power of multiple perspectives, and I don't just mean left and right. Of course, we could identify hundreds of perspectives, on the political spectrum if you wanted to get fine-grained about it. But it's also worth mentioning, and this is something that I cite in developmental politics, how there's been some very interesting research which shows that people are born with a genetic proclivity to be either left or right. And that, in the same way that, that the human genome naturally produces about 50% men and about 50% women, there's something very similar going on with this proclivity toward being generally on the left or generally on the right. It's not hardwired, right? It doesn't determine where you end up in your political orientation or preferences. But there are these tendencies, and they have been shown through neuroscience to be there. And I think what this underscores is that what students of this work know about polarities. In other words, an important part of the practice of integral consciousness or developmental thinking is appreciating the difference between a positive-negative polarity, which is a problem to be solved, and a positive-positive polarity, which is a system to be managed, right? Some of you who are experts at this polarity theory, and I've put videos on it. It's an important part of developmental politics, I think, in general. And if we were to factor down, right, to the most simple expression of what the prime political polarity is, like, so the prime universe polarity is infinite and finite, or being and becoming. But as it shows up in the world here, we can identify it as people who are naturally oriented towards fixing what's wrong, and people who are naturally oriented to preserving what's right. Right? I mean, I'm not trying to characterize that this is a perfect representation of our contemporary understanding of the left wing and the right wing. But I am pointing to the fact that that this is a positive polarity, and it's interdependent. If we're going to fix what's wrong, if we don't, at least by turns, preserve what's right, then we're going to make things worse. But if we are only focused on preserving what's right, then obviously we're not going to be able to fix what's wrong. And in this world of trouble and suffering, we have a moral duty to do that. So this is kind of the good and the good that's underlying this idea of multi-perspectival thinking, even though it's fractally related. So there's plenty of people on the right who are more focused on fixing a wrong and vice versa. But even though there's multiple perspectives, and I don't want to be reductionistic, I think there is a polarity here that we can observe and appreciate, and appreciate why different perspectives, even if we don't agree with them, are interdependent when they're reduced to this level of values, right? When they're not, it's just not just about a different interest or a different policy, but about these fundamental orientations to life on Earth. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick demo here, just to, and I'll come back to the slideshow in a second. So here's the chat bot, and here is a question that I want to put in, from the subtitle of developmental politics: how can America grow into a better version of itself? All right. So asking this question, it takes a minute, and then it starts filling in the answers, and what I found is that the more general the question, the more sort of banal the answer, right? Where it starts to demonstrate some real interesting results is when you ask it specific questions. So for this one, how can America, if we were to click on that, here's the answer below, but just for purposes of this presentation, here's the same answer in my slideshow. And then here it is as text that's not readable here on the slides. But I just wanted to give you an example of what a sort of a general response like this is. So how can America evolve into a better version of itself? And then it gives specific policy proposals, education, criminal justice reform, climate change, healthcare, some of the things that are on, in our platform, and somewhat of an obvious answer. But then when you ask it more specific questions, at least I found that it's a little bit more interesting. So here's a slide of the question: what's the best policy on universal basic income, right? And so, of course, the left answer loves it, thinks it's a great idea. The right answer is the best policy on universal basic income is not to implement it at all. While it may seem like a good idea to provide a basic income to all citizens, the reality is that it would be a massive burden on the economy and it would disincentivize work. It would also require a significant increase in taxes, which would hurt business and individuals alike. Additionally, there's no guarantee that a UBI would actually reduce poverty or improve the quality of life for those receiving it. Instead, we should focus on creating a strong economy that provides opportunities for all individuals to succeed through hard work and innovation, right? So, this is, I think, a fair representation of what a standard right-wing view would be of a policy. And I've seen plenty of articles making this argument in much more elaborate terms. If you click on the developmental view, here I've extracted that text. It's not just a centrist view, it's trying to integrate the different worldviews. So I've added the bold so you can see the answer. It waffles around at first. It says it's an interesting one, it's gained traction. To find a win-win-win solution that synthesizes the best, we can consider a modified approach to UBI, right? So it wants to acknowledge the progressive values of social justice and equality. It wants to align with the modernist value of economic progress and prosperity, and it wants to honor the traditionalist value of loyalty to family and country by emphasizing the importance of work and personal responsibility. And then it recommends that there be a universal basic income that would be a floor for all citizens, but with certain conditions. Individuals who are able to work would be required to actively seek employment or participate in job training programs. I mean, it's a little bit like the messed up system of unemployment insurance right now is. Again, this isn't earth-changing, but what the value of it is that it's giving in one place three, reasonable at least, perspectives on important issues. And I think that by itself at least gets some of the way to integral. And I called it depolarizing GPT because we're calling, the natural labels. We tried to think of other labels, but right-wing GPT and left-wing GPT. Again, we're trying to communicate this to the mainstream audiences and to the media. So it needs to be simple. That's why we haven't got a spectrum of, of all the worldviews from Spiral Dynamics could have their own AI, right? And we could hear what the tribal view would be or the warrior view, and I think that would be of value. But I think it would be too esoteric to gain any kind of wide impact. So just having it be the three is a way of living within our limited budget as a small nonprofit, but also a way of making it conceptually understandable and potentially attractive to as wide a group as possible. I want to focus on this just a minute. I don't agree, with many of the left-wing answers or the right-wing answers. I mean, that's why I'm trying to create this depolarizing GPT. But, ultimately, we want people who are on the right and left to be able to resonate with the answers and feel like that we're not trying to hack it to make it the left answers that we like or the right answers that we like, but what folks who are partisans of those political positions would say for themselves. So, I asked it the question, was the 2020 election stolen from Donald Trump? And the right-wing answer, at first it waffles around, it sort of says there's numerous this and that, but then at the end it says we cannot definitively say that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. So it kind of saves my bacon that it's not, it's not propagating, the big lie, but it's also staying, I think, reasonably close to what folks who are prepared to vote for Trump, what they think. That that this is not disqualifying, and even though that horrifies me, You know, it is part of the power of multi-perspectivity is that you realize that there are people who disagree with you, even on very existential things like, you know, democracy, and still might be people of good sense and good faith, right? That's part of what this is designed to demonstrate. And again, it's an experiment. It's an artificial intelligence. It doesn't get everything done. It's not all things to all people. Real humans are better, but sometimes it's hard to get people's attention. And maybe this is a gimmick, but it has already received some decent attention, and it seems to be people seem to be using it based on the 10 days that it's been out in public. So let me finish by something creative and good that it has created. I asked Jeff Salzman to test it, Jeff and Carter, before it was put into the website in its early prototype form. And Jeff asked it to write a poem on consciousness. And I want to just read this quickly because it's pretty good. I mean, even though like the AI art that we've all seen, it's a little cheesy. The poem's a little cheesy too, I will admit. But it's still kind of fun. And the fact that the machine wrote it is part of the gee whiz factor, at least for me. In the realm of consciousness, let us find a bridge between the modern and the kind. For progress and compassion, hand in hand, can shape a world where all can understand. In the depths of self-awareness, we explore the wonders of the mind forevermore. Embrace the modernist's quest for truth while honoring the traditionalist's roots. Let us celebrate the individual's right to seek enlightenment day and night, but also recognize the ties that bind, the duty to community so intertwined. In the pursuit of progress, let us see the importance of equality and diversity. For in the tapestry of minds and souls lies the strength that makes us whole. So let us weave a poem of consciousness that blends the best of all worldviews, no less, embrace the modernist's thirst for knowledge while cherishing the traditionalist's heritage. In this synthesis, we find a win-win-win, where progress and compassion can begin. For consciousness in all its forms and hues unites us all and helps us choose. So let us strive for a world that's just and fair, where consciousness blooms beyond compare. In this shared journey, let us find a harmony that transcends space and time. So there you go. Depolarizing GPT. Check it out if you haven't already. I hope you find it useful. And now we can move to questions, comments, and objections.
All right. So what we're going to do is, if you do have a question, raise your hand using the reactions button so I can see you. And you will be recorded, and this will be part of our video. So who has a question, a comment, a reflection, an objection? Yes, Trudy.
Okay, so Steve, do you have any data on how many people are taking advantage of this or perusing? It's on developmental politics? Is that where this?
Yeah, well, it's freestanding at depolarizinggpt.org, right? So it has its own website, and that's what we've been, promoting, that URL, so people can go directly to it and not have to find it. But it's also under that menu pull down that I showed on both the Developmental Politics website and on the Institute for Cultural Revolution website and on the Developmentalist magazine. So, if you're at any of our websites, hopefully you'll be able to find a way in to the chatbot. And we have it set up so that that you can try it out without giving your email address or otherwise any information, right? There's a quick trial that for most people's questions will show them what it does. And then there's a free registration where you enter your email, just because it costs us some small amount of money for the data to be used. So, we have to keep track of folks' emails so that we don't get, industrial applications where we're ending up losing our shirt paying for the data that people are using. And anybody who wants to use more than the, 50,000 tokens or words a day can, just contact us and we'll give them more access. We ask for a small donation to help cover the cost. But anyway, Depolarizing GPT is where it lives. We have, we've sent out an email. Rigel's sending out press releases. we don't have a promotional budget for this. It's not like we have money to hire a publicist or go crazy trying to beat the bushes to get attention. We're really relying on it being useful for people and spreading by word of the mouth. So we've had, I haven't counted, but we've had a good number of people who've registered and an even larger number of people who've given it a try. So hopefully it'll spread gradually through word of mouth, and I hope you'll help spread the word.
Michael and then Eric.
So definitely this generative AI is not that general purpose AI which could present this existential threat for humanity. It's very far from it. But this capability to talk convincingly to people, combined with some other ideas that are not really even new. Some of these ideas were known for decades, but they could create capabilities that could be really dangerous and that we cannot even imagine right now. So I am not convinced that this whole thing is harmless. But regarding ChatGPT, someone sent me the quote that I am very much in agreement with. AI language tools like ChatGPT can be eerily convincing, but don't be fooled by their authoritative tones. Chatbots are known to confidently make stuff up. And that's my general problem with these tools. I just don't know how to use them.
Sure.
And I commend you for this clever idea of combining these three different perspectives in one tool. And this is great. So how this is done, I have no complaints about this.
Right. Sure.
I have just this. I just did not find. I don't see how it can be useful. And when I asked it some probing questions, when I asked it to explain something, and it got something that made sense superficially, but missed the really important reasons for these things. So it's again, the biggest question is trust. How can we trust this tool? Although it's better if it has different perspectives.
Well, let me just respond to that. Yeah. So first of all, I admit that artificial intelligence, like any powerful new technology, has risks, perhaps really big risks. I think that we should separate the risks of LLMs from the risks of this imagined idea of generally intelligent AI, which, as I argue extensively in my article, which I highlighted at the beginning of the presentation, I don't think that's possible. So I'm not really considering that any kind of significant risk. But clearly, with what we've got already, there's plenty of risks. Like any tool, it can be used for good as well as bad as well as good. And again, that's something that I try to address. I use our model in a variety of ways. One way I use it is I'm working on my next book now. That takes up the majority of my time these days. But I'll occasionally need a kind of a research assistant. And I'll want to know who the scholars are on a particular topic, or what are some of the best arguments for this proposition or that proposition. And I'll put that answer into GPT-4, the regular chatbot, as well as depolarizing GPT, and all the answers are useful to that research on the book that I'm doing. Sometimes the depolarizing, the three-answer model gives insights that are not contained in regular GPT. I didn't mention that that it is GPT 3.5 Turbo. For you nerds out there, that is the platform that the fine-tuning that went into the three-answer model that was based on. Right. So we started working on GPT-3, and then in July, OpenAI said that they were discontinuing that, and that they were coming out with new models, and that if we wanted to, that anything we trained on it before the new models were released would go offline in December. So we had to wait 6 weeks for OpenAI to launch its upgraded 3.5 turbo. And so that was the platform that we used to fine tune. But again, there are significant differences, even if you go to 3.5 turbo or 4, GPT-4. Sometimes I find the 3.5 is actually better than the 4, depending on the prompt. So I don't think that 4 is head and shoulders above 3.5 turbo. Anyway, that's just kind of we're founded on OpenAI, and that we hope that they do well and that they continue to put filters on both the platform that we're working on that can make even better the filters that we've added to keep people from putting in hateful stuff or stuff that we don't want associated with our brand. So anyway, next question.
Great. Eric, Don, and then Robert.
Yes, hello. Let me get the screen where I can see you again. Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate what you're doing with this. And you sort of answered my question a little bit. Let's see where you are on my screen. Okay, there you are. With your response that it's GPT 3.5. So I had wondered about the training of it. I appreciate that you referenced some of the people, the more classical thinkers that you used, as well as some of the sources of, magazines that are more current. And I had wondered how, quote unquote, up to date it is when new things come into, the political setting. I mean, you use the example of universal basic income, for instance, or something like that. How robust are the answers going to be? And I guess a question in the background is like the training to date, and is there continued training and new information coming in, and how is that fed into there? And maybe just one other seed to make my complicated question here from what Michael was just talking about on not trusting things. I'm wondering, are there ways that the sourcing can be more transparent, and are there ways to say, like, a perspective from John from this thinker or that thinker would be this? Are there ways that could come in that would engender more trust in the output? So some stuff there to work with.
Okay, yeah. So let me try to respond to those specific questions. Now, when we were first working on this in the first half of 2023, the caveat that OpenAI was putting out there was that the model was trained on data up to, I think, December of 2021. And so that everything that occurred, in the world since then was not part of that training. But what's also important to understand is that there's definitely competition going on between these AI big tech companies, and there's a lot of disinformation. So in other words, I've definitely noticed that there are things that are past December of 2021 that Turbo 3.5 as a model is aware of. So I don't believe what they say, basically, in terms of when the data is cut off or how up to date it is. It's a little bit like a black box there. Regarding the training and the transparency of the training, there's all kinds of ways that we could make this better. And indeed, some of it would be available for us to make better in our own little nonprofit way. Others depend on the tech giants making things better. I know that Bard, Google's AI, has some features that allow you to kind of compare it to the internet. Again, I haven't spent a lot of time lately being up to speed on what they're doing and ways they're trying to improve it. Would it be great if the answers had footnotes, that we got this from there? Absolutely. I'd love it to do that. But that wasn't available to us at the time that we trained this. To be honest, as I said in the presentation, I created this as a way of promoting the idea of multi-perspectivity and of showing people the idea that depolarizing, a depolarized view is not necessarily a centrist view, that there's a higher form of centrism, and that the work of integral philosophy in general and our think tank in particular demonstrates that. And so, this is not a for-profit business, right? It's a nonprofit, humble project. And so personally, I'm going to be focusing on my book. I'm not going to be thinking of ways I can spend more money on developing this and refining it further. Unless, of course, it catches on and we have, donors who come in and say, hey, we want to improve it in this way or that way, or we want to, train it on, we don't keep training it on the latest. I mean, there's all kinds of ways we could continue to develop this, but we already are over budget on it. And I'm personally, I'm not willing to dedicate more precious time in my life to building chatbots that give banal answers that would be better answered by a real human with integral consciousness. Anyway, I just wanted, I don't want to put down the model. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of what it can do, but excellent ways to improve it are abounding, and we just I don't have the personal mental bandwidth to focus on that, and neither do we have the budget to invest in that. Hopefully it'll work as it is for the time being.
Makes total sense. Thank you.
Great. Steve, how are you feeling about breakout groups? Take a couple more
Let's
questions.
at least take these next two questions for sure.
Great. All right, Don and then Robert.
Thanks. Hi, Steve. Great. I'm a big fan of developmental politics, your application of developmentalism to politics. And you online, your social media, you do any number of, here's a depolarized view that maybe would apply to all the world views and be a place to go. This is what this is really, it's a cool technology hack for one thing. So, kudos for that. But where does it get us? We're in a two-party system in the US. The two sides are polarized, and the positions are held hostage to the extreme views. You can present that middle view, but how do you get people to go there?
Well, we're building this chatbot, and we're trying to promote it and get people to use it as a way for people who are stuck in their left-wing bubble to at least be exposed to two other viewpoints that are not inside that bubble, and vice versa for the right. Do I think this 3-answer chatbot is going to overcome political polarization in the United States? I would be pretty naive if I did. But is it a contribution that depolarizes our already highly polarized media? I think I can claim that. And I think just exposing people to what a reasonable view from the other side looks like, I think that's something that you don't see very much in the media today. And so to the extent that it does just that, I think it's a positive development.
All right, Robert.
Steve, I think this is great. I've used it 3 times, and one formatting question first, and then I'll follow with a few other questions you can answer. The horizontal field at the top of it, where you enter your prompt, if it could be enlarged a little bigger, so that you could see the prompt before it disappears to the right, that would be nice. Okay.
Okay, but let me just say that when you click on the answer, the 3 answers, it shows your prompt again in bold. A little bit easier, so it repeats your prompt after you just click on one or the other to read it.
Right, but that's after you've seen it. But I mean when I'm entering it, because then I can see, yeah. Now I hopefully you've entered lots of the ideas from the books you've written too, because when I got some of the prompts back, especially the integral one, I was looking for a lot of those ideas too in there. So I would assume some of that's in there. The third one was that are you able to save the responses that this sends out to us, that we get in response to the prompt we've given? Are you able to save, so for future reference, to take a look at what you're accumulating here from all these questions that people are entering, the information, data?
Sure. Well, let me respond. First, there's all kinds of things that I'd like to make it better on. One, I'd love to have the prompt field at the top expand, right? That would have been a lot more programming, believe it or not. So we just sort of, it is what it is. If you want to make it bigger, you can zoom out on your browser and magnify it, and that'll make it bigger as a hack. I can also say that when I use regular GPT-4, the chats are saved. It's saved in the column on the left. But what I end up doing is when I get an answer that I like, that I want to keep, I just paste it into a Word file. Again, you know, it's not big tech that's creating this, so we haven't thought of every possible permutation. So if you get an answer that you like, just, you know, cut and paste it into a separate file and save it that way. That way you won't have to log back in if you want to look at it or otherwise. Just you know, the sort of old school way of saving what's online.
Yeah.
And then finally, regarding the training of it, sure, we took the book Developmental Politics and we fed it in, right, to the training process, the whole book, as well as all the articles written by me and the other senior fellows on the Developmentalist magazine, as well as a few other choice pieces of integral content. And you know, the way this training works, it's a little bit of a black box. It's a little mysterious. Like, I looked at some of the prompts that David Rosato created to try to get it to kind of demonstrate this way of thinking, or to get it to pick up on some of the themes of the book and other things we've written. And I really found that, you know, in the same way that you can't really control what it says completely, or you wouldn't be using the AI to generate the answers. It's not like we can just, you know, say, okay, well, on an answer to this, we want you to say this. As an answer, that would be a kind of a dirty hack to try to force it to say what the general training is getting it oriented to. Do I wish it was more integral? Definitely, but I don't think it's possible to create an AI. You know, I hope I'm proved wrong, but I don't think, at least at this time in history, it's possible to create an AI that would demonstrate real integral consciousness, authentic integral consciousness. There's a variety of reasons why I think that, but I think that just showing three perspectives itself, just being able to demonstrate that there are three ways of looking at things, that's the beginning of integral consciousness, but it's certainly not the end of it. And again, we could, you know, I think if future more powerful LLMs, when they come out, if we were to retrain them with the integral material and add material as it develops and is published, you know, I think if we could keep making it better and better, but that's not in the cards at the moment.
Great questions, you guys and gals. So Steve, you want to do
Sure, let's do a breakout. What I'd like you to discuss for about, let's call it 17 minutes, is how the practice of developmental thinking or integral consciousness has kind of caused you to take multiple perspectives. You know, like if you can think of an anecdote or a story about how you considered the other side in ways you may not have before you became, you know, an integralist. You know, just talk about how you use multi-perspectivalism, you know, just in your own thinking. You know, whether you're thinking about it from different points of view, and how that is or is not, you know, part of your daily practice. So let's go ahead and do breakout groups about the multiple perspectives and how that is an important part of any truer vantage point. And we'll see you back in 17 minutes.